notation. And our tool was just like 1 times reduction on the key, so we'll just strip out some, but not a lot. Scooby-Doo DS, we pretty much just rip off all the facial bones, hand bones, that sort of thing. It was all rigid weighting, so 1 weight per vertex, and like a 5 times multiplier on the threshold of deleting keys within the animation. And that most of the time works really well, but we've occasionally got some characters where the feet would swim a little bit and that sort of thing. So we can have a per bone reduction multiplier on our rigs. So you say maybe on pelvis or the knee and foot have a lesser reduction. So you won't optimise those bones out as much, whereas maybe the spine and hands, it doesn't matter so much because you're not going to see feet skating on the ground, on the upper body obviously. Unless it's Scooby-Doo, who's got 4 feet on the ground. And with the rigging and animation, we try and use, or almost always use, exactly the same control rig for all platforms. So even though the DS rig is 25 bones, it's the same control rig, the same animation as the Wii and PS2. I'll show you a little example of that here. So there's the Wii version of Scooby with our rig to drive him around and do whatever. I'm not an animator, so you can laugh at my animation. So you can do whatever. And then that's the DS version of the same character, obviously. And yeah, he's only 250 poly, whereas the other one was 2,500. And all using exactly the same control rig, just less bones. A few weighting issues here, just a quick cinema to demonstrate what the animators get up to. I'll show you. So that's the control rig, and we have an export rig as well, which is in there. So that's the Wii export rig. Anything that's not skinned, like obviously the eyeballs don't need to be skinned because they're just a static mesh or a mesh that just moves around. They're just printed straight to the rig. So we always have the eyeballs, and in this case it was eyelids, but we found that's probably not the best thing to do. You should skin your eyelids because they're doing funky lighting. So that's the facial rig that would just get thrown away on the DS. So the DS version, I'll show you the DS rig. So that's the DS rig there. So it's a lot less bones, there's none of the facial stuff, and the tail is just a single bone because we couldn't afford to have 3 or 4 bones to get a nice tail wag sort of thing. But it's the same control rig that drives both skeletons, different meshes and export rigs, but the animator just animates once and exports one for DS, one for everything else. Just because the DS is so much lower and its limitations of memory and performance and and the exciting part is stats. After a few GDC sessions I went to, everyone was saying, yeah, collect stats on your stuff, it's great. And I thought, yeah, I'll give it a go. So it's actually the only bit of Python amongst that tool set. I just used Python within Maya to take a bunch of data and stick it into an SQL database. And it's also great for detecting problems within the art because you can do a really quick search on the database to find, okay, what character has got the most polys or what level has got the most materials and that sort of thing. Normally when you want to optimize something down, you start with the worst problem first. And it's a quick way to find out of the entire game what's worst. And also every click of every tool within the suite records a stat. It's a little bit like Big Brother, but it's mainly just to help me develop better tools. So I know if a tool's being used a lot, clean it up, improve it. If the tool's never being used, I can probably get rid of it. It's great to see trends over a project as well, and management life graphs always. And as I said, it's just a small Python script that pumps out stats to the database. Here's an example of, I did a little web GUI for it as well. It's just an example of one of the load regions from Scooby. It's just been working along. Somewhere it got broken around June, May, and then it just got worked on a bit more, and then sometime in later May they did a lot of work and the vertex count and the poly count jumped way up. And it's also good in here, you can quickly blame people who broke things too. And here's another example of another level. So it's just been progressively growing over a couple of weeks' work. But you can see how the number of verts is jumping faster than the number of faces. Because if you've got hard edges or broken UVs, you get more vertices on hardware than you do actually in Maya, one single vert in Maya could be half a dozen verts in game because it's got to break it up for different UVs, different vertex colours, different normals. So you can see that the level's getting pretty sloppy as far as smoothing normals, cleaning up UVs and that sort of thing. So you can sort of do some analysis of the level and say, okay, this one we probably should clean up a bit, you might get a bit better performance if the game's not running at 60 all the time. It's good to be able to analyse the data that way and just do some queries over the whole game and find out your cases you want to work on and fix. And on the tools side, this is just a little table of the tool usage. I record how many times each staff member uses the tool for that week. So when it says there's 275 users, it's not actually 275 people at Torus, we're only about 60, 65, but each week it'll just add another stat. This shot was taken a while ago, but you can see this anim save constraints tool is almost never used. It was probably just used once when I tested that the button worked. And it's something that hasn't been touched since, so I probably should just get rid of it. Whereas exporting entities and exporting the scene files, which is our graphics and collision geometry, has been used 12 and 20,000 times over the time the tool was recording stats. And when I first saw those numbers, I went, geez, it's a lot more than I expected people to be pressing the export button. So when I saw that, I went in and did as much as I could to optimize the exporter. And within a few hours, we had it going about 5 times faster, just because some basic things like writing files out was too slow. It was writing out in like every word or float in the file has been written out individually. I just changed the buffering it up to 4K and dumping it in one shot, and it made the exporter go about 5 times faster. So you can really optimize things a lot if you know what's best to target, and get rid of buttons on your tools if you know people aren't using them. And over the course of the project, this is just how often people exported scene files. You can see throughout Scooby, the start of the graph was just when stats collection started, so the data for that week's a bit off. But as we were heading towards final, the number of exports dropped because things were being finished. A bit of a bug fixing phase towards the end, and then obviously it stops. People go on holidays, so not much happens. And then as our new projects are starting up, people start exporting things a lot more often as they're creating prototypes and testing geometry and that sort of thing. So it's just nice to see what's going on around the studio and get an idea of what to do. And it's obvious from this as well, between projects is a fantastic time to overhaul your tool set, because you'll annoy less people if you break things or do major changes to what you're doing. Our future improvements, we're creating an in-house tool that we just call the Mega tool at the moment to do all the entity placement as well as particle effects and better implementation of physics in-game. Trying to get as much stuff that you can do see in-game in an editor as much as we can. It'd be great to have the Maya renderer, the game renderer in the Maya viewport. I mean, it's possible, the coders know how to do it, we just haven't got there yet. And also, real-time terrain editing, that road building tool running real-time, and obviously foliage real-time. It'd be great to just run around your level in game, print down some bushes and trees and just keep going. Some tech I know can already do it, but we're not quite there yet. We don't want to spend, when your project budgets are only a few million, you can't afford to spend $1 million on Unreal Engine or a sandbox or something like that. So I know most Australian studios are relatively small, you don't have huge budgets, so you just got to make do with Maya or 3ds Max or whatever you can. Any questions? Surely there's a few out there.
Cool. Yep. With the Mega tool, is that going to be a separate tool, or is that going to be done within Maya?
It's a separate tool. It's almost ready to put into development, but it's all done in .NET. But it integrates with our renderer as well. So,
is there any worry that you're going to have to teach people 2 tools?
A little bit. That's my major concern. We're trying to make the interface kind of Maya-like where we can. Try and keep similar hotkeys and workflows to the tools that guys have been used to for the last 5-10 years. It's certainly something we're really aware of, and that's one of the reasons we haven't put it into current titles. Is some things aren't ready for easy workflow changeover.
Are you all